In other news, the US president has announced he's firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Donald Trump taking his fight with the US Central Bank up a notch over allegations Cook committed mortgage fraud. But Lisa Cook says she will not be stepping down, adding the president doesn't have the authority to sack her. We can now bring in our foreign affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, great to see you.
You pretty much summed it up, Delano.
I summed it up.
Yeah.
So tell me, what could be behind this move? Because Donald Trump has had in his visor Jerome Powell, the Fed chair. He's never really spoken about Lisa Cook. Suddenly this comes out of the woodwork.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, look, you don't have to go out on an editorial limb to say this is not really about Lisa Cook and allegations of mortgage fraud. Allegations, I may point out, for which she's never been convicted of a crime. It's never been proven in court. And as she said, she has absolutely no intention of stepping down. This looks like a targeted and politically motivated campaign. And what do I mean by politically motivated? The person who brought to Donald Trump's attention these allegations of mortgage fraud, i.e. that Lisa Cook may have falsified bank and property records in order to get favorable terms on loans on a mortgage she was taking out. All of these might be, would be, could be allegations have been used to sort of justify this move to fire her, which went ahead without her being consulted about. Look, what's really seems to be going on here is it's part of, as you sort of alluded to in the open, a broader push by Donald Trump to exert control, to exert authority over various agencies and branches of the U.S. government, which are still staffed by sort of government professionals, often, civil service professionals who sometimes challenge him, dare to define him, or basically just try to do their jobs. In this case, this is part of an escalating campaign, it would seem, and legal experts will tell you this, an escalating campaign, capricious and arbitrary, it would seem, against the Federal Reserve in particular, right? The U.S. Central Bank, which is charged with setting interest rates, taming inflation, trying to keep employment steady, all of that, to basically do his bidding. What do I mean by that? We have seen until today, and us talking about Lisa Cook, someone whose name most people, I would probably, safe bet, have never heard of. She's a governor of the Federal Reserve Board. But most people have heard of the person is Jerome Powell, the Fed chief, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. He has been savaged in recent weeks and months by Donald Trump, who has all but explicitly said he
picked as well.
He was a Trump pick. And he wants him out. Why? Because in Donald Trump's estimation, Jerome Powell, as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, wasn't doing his bidding. What I mean by that, wasn't lowering interest rates and wasn't doing it quickly enough. Lisa Cook, you could say she's someone no one's ever heard of. She's a cipher in a way, but she's one of, there are 7 Federal Reserve Board governors, and they all sit on the 12-person monetary committee, which sets the U.S. interest rates. She's an important figure. She's not to be neglected, and she is going to fiercely, heard lawyers say, fiercely defend her independence, because that has always been sort of the purview of the Federal Reserve, independent agency.
Given that you said independence,
Yeah.
Donald Trump says he can fire her. She says not so fast, you cannot. So who's right?
Okay, well, let's start with the charter of the Federal Reserve Board itself. When it was set up, there's a clause within that charter under the Federal Reserve Act, which basically says that a chief executive, a president, has to find probable just cause in order to remove an official from the Federal Reserve Board, which would mean, what do they mean by just cause? It means really gross misconduct. There has to be real malfeasance that you can point to. Like I said, Lisa Cook, these are allegations of maybe, what if, perhaps misconduct over a mortgage loan, a personal matter which has never been proven in court, for which he has never been charged with a crime. So the Supreme Court precedent also has tended in the past to side with the Federal Reserve Bank. The reason it's treated the Federal Reserve Bank a little differently as almost a special agency, an independent agency, is because its mission is so important, right? Setting the national interest rates, which also spill over with global economic impact. It's wanted to preserve as much as possible the independence of its governors. That is, their dissociation from political interference by a president, a Donald Trump, let's say, in order that they can make their monetary decisions independently. So the Supreme Court 90 years ago, 1935, made a decision which sort of favored protecting justices from political interference. Now, that was a case involving another commission, the Federal Trade Commission, not the Federal Reserve Board, but it was another agency, and it's been a precedent that has been since sort of looked at repeatedly and often cited. I will just say in recent years, since say 2020, the Supreme Court has continued to uphold those protections against for Federal Reserve officials, but has hinted perhaps that the chief executive, that is the president, and this is an argument that Trump would be making, does have the prerogative to fire the officials he wants. Donald Trump sees these checks and balances, this so-called independence of the Federal Reserve, as an unconstitutional, this is how he sees it, check on his proper executive authority as president to fire whoever he sees fit to fire.
And this is not the first time he's used these claims of fraud to get rid of people who essentially stand in his way.
Absolutely. In fact, he has the official, the Trump-appointed official who works at what's called the Federal Housing Finance Authority, the guy who signaled these alleged mortgage fraud allegations to Donald Trump in the first place before Donald Trump posted that he's firing this official on his Truth Social network. That official has also helped Trump in the past. They have targeted other officials, notably Adam Schiff. You might remember that name, Delano, because he was a California representative who also led the inquiries into Donald Trump, alleged malfeasance during Donald Trump's first term. So no friend for Donald Trump, Adam Schiff. He has been the same allegations of this type of mortgage fraud. And Letitia James, another name which you know from the recent past, just before Trump was elected, she actually won a case against Donald Trump, a civil case in civil court in New York City. She was an attorney general in New York. So these are all significant. The same types of mortgage fraud allegations. This is why legal experts look at this and they say, this isn't just about mortgage fraud. This isn't just about they happen to find some documents and these people are doing some dodgy stuff. This is about political retribution against people that Donald Trump perceives as his enemies, people who are not doing his bidding, or people who dare to oppose his agenda. That's what legal scholars, a lot of people will tell you. Obviously, Donald Trump will take great exception, say, I'm president, I can do what I want to do what's best for America.
In the past, historically, yes, we have had U.S. presidents who've not always been happy with decisions that come from the Federal Reserve, but they've kept that sort of distance. They have respected that independence. Donald Trump has turned it on its head, essentially.
It's turned on its head, and like I just used, the word political retribution, and that really, politics is not just transactional in Donald Trump's administration so far, based on the evidence and the precedents of what we've seen since last January. It's very personal. This is often about a sense of perceived grievance that Donald Trump might have against a particular individual who may have said something bad about him in the past, or may have had negative comments or criticism of Donald Trump or one of his policies. Donald Trump's What the skeptics will tell you here is Donald Trump's entire agenda here, especially if the Reserve, say to the Federal Reserve Board, is to make sure to do what he did with the Supreme Court, essentially, stacking it with a conservative supermajority. It's now 6-3 conservative supermajority to sort of do his bidding, to do his agenda. The Federal Reserve Board right now, he also recently, there was a retirement. He had a replacement on that board. He wants to make sure that that board, I told you, there were 7 people on the Federal Reserve Governor's Board. All of them sit on that monetary committee, which is 12 people. He wants to, this is what the skeptics will say, make sure the Federal Reserve Board is not some independent board free of political interests, but a board that is there with his loyalists, ready to do his agenda, to do his bidding. And I will just mention Jerome Powell, the man who has been savage, the chair, he's due to retire next year. So Donald Trump seems to be sort of on the timeline to actually get his will done. And perhaps the Federal Reserve Board will soon be a very much MAGA-mirrored type of board.
We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for that, Douglas Herbert there. Now,